Hello everybody. So this is just a very quick video to show you how to configure Jagannatha Hora right from the beginning. So what I've actually done is I've gone ahead and reinstalled my Jagannatha Hora fresh from the start, so that I'm basically going to be having what you're going to be seeing when you come into the interface of the program. So this is what it's going to look like for you. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to see that you have the format of the South Indian chart. And well, for some people, they like it. Myself personally, I always like to do the North Indian because the houses are static. So we need to come up here in where it says preferences. So you go up all the way up in the menu and go to preferences related to display. And the display, we're going to go to chart style and language. So here we're going to go ahead and leave English as the default language. And here in the second tab, instead of having South Indian regular or irregular, we're just going to go ahead and say North Indian, or what it's known as the diamond chart. And we're going to click OK and say OK. And what you will notice is that at once Jagannatha Hora is going to clean the interface for you. Then the next thing you're going to want to do, according to what computer you're using, if you're using a Windows computer, I think your interface is going to look okay, which means that the letters and the numbers. Let me see if I can bring the zoom in. I have a little program that does that so that we may know where we're pointing. I have a pointer somewhere. No, it seems that I don't have it. But anyway, we have these letters. These are the names of the planets, and what's happening over here is that depending on your resolution, the letters are going to be small or big. So we're going to take care of that. If you have a Windows computer, it should be just fine that the planets are within the boundaries of the houses. But if, like me, you're using the emulator called Crossover and you're in a Mac, you're going to find this problem that the planets are overlapping the houses. It's like in case here of the moon and Rahu, there's a serious overlap over here. So we're going to take care of that. So step number 1 is done. We've changed to North Indian chart. And then the next thing you want to do is, you see right here you have the natal chart, and then you have the Navamsa D-9, you have the 3rd division, the 30th, the 10th divisional chart, and the 60th. So all of these are called the Vargas, or the divisional charts. Since we are in the very basic course of Vedic astrology, we're not going to need them. So the first thing we want to do is we want to turn them off. So what you're going to do is, if you're in Windows, you're going to right click on top of any of the houses, or if you're in a Mac, just go to your pad, to your trackpad, and with 2 fingers, you're going to click with 2 fingers, and you're going to get this menu. Once you get that menu, go all the way down to the menu and you're going to say turn off packed chart mode. So that is going to restart the program. So you're going to get the notice over here. It says pack chart mode is off now. Jagannatha Hora will now close. Please restart Jagannatha Hora. So go ahead and do it. Say OK. And then I think you're going to have to look for your program. So in my case, it's over here all the way. Where are you? Can't see Jagannatha Hora. Where are you? Here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Yeah. I like to have it in my bar. So if you're in Windows, just relaunch. So this is what I'm doing. I'm relaunching. And when I come in, for me it takes a while because the emulator is going on. So there we go. We have Jagannath. And then what you're going to see over here is that you have, the very basics, which are the Rashi chart and the Navamsa. But since I'm using an emulator, it looks terrible. So what I want to do is I want to go to Preferences. I'm going to go Related to Display. This is then the next thing I do. And I go to Font Size. And I'm going to go to Adjust Font Size. And if you want the fonts to be smaller or bigger, change the setting below. compared to the rest of the fonts, do you want the language fonts in charts to be bigger or smaller? So I like the standard here. This is okay for me, but I'm going to go ahead and say make them much smaller. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK and see what that looks like. So if you see now, the letters inside of the chart do no longer overlap. And I use this function a lot because if you go Command Shift 4, then what you can do is if you're reading a chart for a client and you have a template, you can screenshot what's within the boundaries of the chart, and then you can use that to put it in a in a graphics program if you have a template. So I've taken a screenshot of it, and here by using the Alt Shift 4 or print screen in your Windows computer, you can have a picture of the chart. However, there's still one more thing that we have to do, which is you are going to go to Edit, Birth Data. And in Birth Data, the first thing I do, because Jagannatha Hora is set to the default location at Westminster, and this is 0 degrees in the Earth, so it's 0 hours. So what I do is, for example, I am in Vilnius, Lithuania, so I'm going to go ahead and say click in the city of Vilnius, look for it, and then mark it, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Then the next thing that we want to do is you go to Preferences and say, one second, Birth Data. You're going to want to go to Preferences, and then you go to Set Current Location as Default. So every time you open Jagannatha Hora, you will have the city you're in as your present location, so you don't have to change it. This is very useful when you are trying to see what's going on in the present time. So naturally, when you open the program, it'll give you a an overlook of where the planets are in what houses at the present moment when you are checking the configurations of the sky. So then the next thing that I like to do is I like to go to Preferences and say Save Preferences, so that Jagannatha Hora knows that whatever I configure it with, that's how I like it. And you gotta instruct it to do that. Then I like finally to go to Related to Display, and I like to go to Colors to be Used. And then I like to go over here to where it says Chart Frames. And then I like to go background inside of the charts and then simply slide down to white. This is going to change this gray color you see here. It's going to change it into white. So that instead of, that gray, you see, which is that one, it'll, the charts will print in white. So I think that's the option. If not, I might be mistaken, but as far as I know, that's how you do it. And then you go Save Colors. The effects don't take place until you restart the computer. So not the computer, but the program. But, definitely you want to change the colors so that your printer will not have a hard time printing this gray and you can save some ink. So that is something that I do. Then you have the basics over here of the Jagannatha Hora chart, which is, you have the Lagna. Lagna is the ascendant. And then you have Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. And then you have all of these very complicated calculations all the way to the bottom of your chart. We are only going to be using up to Ketu for the, up to where Ketu is for our basic course. And so please don't mind the rest. Remember, Jagannatha Hora is probably the most advanced Vedic astrological program in the world. So it's got a lot of information. And Vedic astrology is very, very vast. So for now, what you need to know, you have a Navamsa. First course, we're not going to be doing that. So we're just going to stick to the Rashi chart, which is the chart calculated on the basis of the ascendant. And we're going to be using the information that we have over here in this window, which is the information of the day, which is, this is called the Panchang. what is important of here is that you're going to have your time zone, you're going to have your day, time, and the place of birth, which is how we calculate a birth chart. And then you're going to have, what's going on in the lunar year, and what is the tithi. The tithi is the face of the moon in relationship to the face of the sun. So it's a calculation that comes from calculating the distance between both. So there is, in every month, there is 30 tithis, and they succeed themselves in cycles. So there's 15 tithis for the bright cycle of the moon called Shukla Paksha, and there is 15 for the dark cycle of the moon called the Krishna Paksha. So one is bright half of the moon and one is dark half of the moon. So this is important for choosing auspicious events and also for knowing the nativity of the personality you have in front. Then we have the weekday, and then we're going to have the nakshatra. Again, this is simply an introduction to the first course, but the nakshatra is basically the constellation where the moon is positioned, so that we know exactly what software, what emotional or reactive software the person is using in their mind. So what type of processor, what type of mind the person has. So, you could relate it to, okay, so is this, is this an iPhone with iOS, or is this an Android phone that runs with Android OS? And what version of Android is that? So that's the nakshatra, so pretty much the operating system. And then we have all sorts of other information, which is Yoga, Karana, Ora Lord, Mahakala, Gauri Panchang. All of these things, this is for the later courses, which is a more detailed microscopic view of the personality. We have the sunrise, the sunset of the moment, when the sun rose on that day, when the sunset was coming in, according to the muhurta, which is the division of the day when the first ray of light was considered to hit the end of the night, beginning of the day, and then the end of the day and the beginning of the night. So according to your place, wherever you are in the world, this is going to be different for any given day. So it's important to remember. And so we have this. And then we have the Satbala, the Astaka Varga, which is the dignity or the power of the planets. And this is given by points. This is something that we're going to be reviewing in the second level of the astrological course, which is how to evaluate how powerful a given planet may be according to their dignity, their position in the chart. So the Bhav, the Bhima, the Bhav, Astaka Varga is important. There's many of those. Then we go to strengths, which is the Satbala here in the second, the second division of the program. You have the strengths, and here you can see the balas. Balas basically means the strength of the planets. Bala means strength. And this Ishtapala, for example, is according to how well the lords are positioned, the lordship of the houses. The Shatbala, this is the one that we usually always use to determine the strength of planets. So for example, today when I'm making the video, we can see that Venus is very strong and Mercury is also very strong at the time and place when I'm casting this horoscope, etc. So then you have the Ashtaka Varga, which is, a visual representation of what we saw before. And then we have the other strengths. This is nice. Here in other strengths for the beginners in Vedic astrology, it's very, very nice because you can go all the way to the bottom. And according to your first divisional chart, you can see what yogas or what combinations, what relationships the chart creates naturally. So you'll be able to see that in your own chart. So for example, today there's a Bhadra Yoga because Mercury is in Gemini. So when Gemini is in its own sign or in its sign of, when Mercury is in its own sign or sign of exaltation, this is called a Bhadra Mahapurush Yoga. So it gives you the result of being learned, cheerful, and helping of relatives. And then it explains you how that yoga is formed. So here you can see, the combinations, are called in different ways. You can extend it. If you put your mouse here, you'll see two arrows. And then you can always extend um, what this means so that you can read and learn about yourself. It's something interesting to do. You will have Raj Sambandhas. For example, today there's Shanka Yoga. Shanka Yoga is formed when Venus and Mars, conjunct because the fifth and sixth lords are in mutual kendras. So as we go into the houses, you'll understand what this means because I will explain what are trikonas, what are kendras, that we will see during this course. So it's very nice to know these things. And then you're going to come over here to the dashas. The dashas are very important because the Bimshotari dasha is the basic method of predicting the future and the time lapse of the present incarnation. So it's according to the nakshatra. So wherever your lunar constellation falls, we're going to count time and the sequence of the planetary time from there. So dasha is a period of service, and maha is great. So great periods of service. So, like today, if a baby was born today, he would be born in the Saturn Mahadasha. So, Saturn would teach him a lesson from 2007 all the way to 26. So what I look at when a client comes to my consultation is like, okay, what Mahadasha is he's in? And then I ask myself, for example, if he is in Saturn. In this case, Saturn is in the 8th house, and it's in Capricorn. It's retrograde and conjunct Jupiter. So another thing to notice in Jagannatha Hora, how does a retrograde planet be represented? Is you're going to see parentheses around the planet. So when there's parentheses, that means that the planet is retrograde. At the moment, we have 3 retrograde planets, being Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter. And at the moment, Jupiter is debilitated in Capricorn. So this is giving us the, like the riots that are going on in the world because of the presence of retrograde and fallen Jupiter. Then you have transits. So here, it gets a little more complex. So these are things that Tajaka, Titi Prabesh, mundane, and miscellaneous, these are things that we're not going to be using. So, we've gone through the basics of how to use the Jagannatha Hora chart. Try to always remember that you can always come to the first page. I usually only use basics and dashas. Sometimes when I'm predicting the future or when I'm trying to find good auspicious dates to perform activities, I use mundane because mundane has a tab that permits you to see what day the planets are going to be transiting, into the next sign. So, for example, if I want to know when Jupiter, right, is going to go to the next Rashi, right? Right now it's in a Capricorn. And since it's retrograde, I want to know when it's going to go into Sagittarius. So I'm going to go before, and I'm going to go to planetary transit mode and click there. And then it's going to give me the result that, Jupiter is going to go direct in Capricorn in March 29th of 2020. So that's when Jupiter was, functioning correctly. Then if I want to know when Jupiter is going to be after, I go to planetary transit mode. It's going to give me when Jupiter is going to go next into Sagittarius. So it gives me the date of June 30th of 2020. Remember, retrograde planets move backwards. So this is the tool that I use to predict when the planets are going to be moving to the next Rashi. And in that way, I understand, the patterns of the universe and how to predict. So I use this quite a lot. And, if you want to predict the future or see the trend of the universe, you're going to be using this tab. But basically, we're going to be using these two, and you're going to go a lot to edit and birth data, right? And in birth data, you have over here the day, the month, the year, and then you have the time in hours and minutes. You can choose gender, male or female. This is when you're doing compatibility. It's also good that you do it. And then you can input your city's name. If you downloaded the link that I sent you, the Jagannatha Hora that you downloaded comes power packed with all sorts of cities from around the world. And if you can't find it, remember that you always have Wikipedia. Or what I do is I calculate the biggest city nearby the town your client is born. As long as you're in the same country, except for like Russia or Brazil, you're going to be okay with calculating the biggest nearby city. And when you enter a city, just go rest of the world, and you will find your city here. Click and say OK. And so that should get you started for the Jagannatha Hora program. Remember, this is just a quick tutorial for the basics. And for more advanced features, we're going to be reviewing those at a later time if you access the later courses. But, from my side, this is all for today. Have a happy full moon day. Happy Purnima. And I'll see you in class. Radhe Radhe.